Okay, I've waited a couple minutes and I guess we're going to get started. We do have a fairly low attendance tonight, but I appreciate everyone that's here. And I'd just like to remind everyone that we are recording these meetings and they're being posted to our Facebook and YouTube pages. So even though we don't have a lot of people here right now, hopefully a lot of people do hear this information tonight. So first, I'll just read some basic announcements. We have, no major announcements this month other than obviously the election is coming up. The Greenway is expected to be opening by October 31st. I'm not sure if that has changed yet. And then I'll jump into the crime report if Officer Ruiz is ready. I believe you're muted right now. I can ask you to unmute.
Hi, Mike.
Hey, Hannah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for attending tonight.
Yes, no worries. I also have my partner, Wilbur Murray, on this call, too. He's my homeless outreach partner.
Oh, okay, great.
So if there's any questions that has to do with homeless, he'd be willing to answer any of those. I will say, yes, Cole neighborhood's been pretty quiet lately. I pulled up our stats and we have seen a decrease in the property crimes. So that's a good thing. That means everybody's keeping things locked up and out of sight. So we're not having as many property crimes as we were previously. And I do know that you did ask me a question about the shooting at Russell Park. What you know is pretty much all that can be divulged at this time because of the ongoing investigation. So until that's completed, we can't really give any more information on that.
Okay. Well, thank you for letting me know. And we don't really have any other participants tonight, so there aren't really any other questions. I will mention my neighbor's car was stolen out of their garage yesterday. They left the keys in it and the garage door was open. So it's kind of a crime of opportunity, but it's just an unfortunate thing.
Ooh.
So other than that, you know, the neighborhood's been pretty quiet.
Yes, it has been. So it's a good thing.
Good.
And everything's going well. So yeah, if you don't have any questions for me or any questions for Wilbur, we'll just let you carry on with your meeting.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll make sure we get, you know, if questions do come in, I'll make sure they're forwarded to you. So thank you.
That's great. Good talking to you, Mike.
Good talking to you too. Have a good evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Oh, and with that, we'll jump into our presentation with Councilwoman Robin Kniech. Sorry.
No worries. Hi, Cole. Whether you're in real time or you're watching a little bit after, I think I just need to get the technology so that I can share my screen, and I'm just going to share a few updates about 2B. So once again, I'm your at-large Councilwoman Robin Kniech. It's been an honor to serve you. I'm in my third and final term, and I want to thank you again for the opportunity to work on really important issues facing our city. And one of them is homelessness. And so yes on 2B is a measure that was referred by the City Council to the ballot, and it is on the back of the second page of your ballot. And I'm just going to give a quick overview. And then, you know, we don't have a lot of participants to ask questions, but the yes on 2b.org website does have some frequently asked questions. So if you watch this and you have a question and it's not live, you can go to that website and probably get an answer. So yes on 2b.org. So with that, there we go. The City of Denver residents, generally speaking, don't need a lot of background on why there is a need, but I think there is sometimes a question about who is experiencing homelessness. Some of the people experiencing homelessness we see, you might have called about camps in your neighborhood or those that are sleeping on the streets or in parks. But we have many other pieces of homelessness in our community. So those fleeing domestic violence, right? Women, they're maybe in safe harbor shelters. We have families with children who might be in short-term motels or might be in cars. They are not as visible to us, but TUBE is as important to those we can't see as it is to those that we can see. And it's also important for our city's commitment to racial equity, which I know is important to the Cole neighborhood. We have a disproportionate number of Black African-American residents experiencing homelessness, 4 to 5 times their portion of the population. And the Native American disparity is even greater. We have about 12 times disparity. The symbol here is incorrect. I need to correct that. It's less than 1% of the population and 6% of homelessness. So we have had many increased challenges due to COVID. Our shelters were designed to fit as many people as close together as possible. And COVID is the opposite, right? It's about social distancing. So we've lost about half our shelter capacity. And we are mostly making that up with emergency locations that you might have heard about at the Coliseum or other locations. And those dollars that are funding all of that expansion are federal emergency dollars and some city emergency dollars. They are not sustainable. And so we do need to restore some of the shelter capacity we've lost. And that is a piece of what TUBE will help us do in year 1. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. So the sales tax that is proposed, 0.25%, what that means is 2.5 cents on a $10 purchase. I want to first let you know about some of the things that mitigate the impact of this tax on Denver residents. We do not charge it on food, gasoline to get to work, medicine, and feminine hygiene products. And so those are some of the things that make it a less regressive tax than it would be ordinarily in order to protect those who are most vulnerable from as much impact. The other thing is that it is paid by visitors. So this is an example where our visitors and those who travel in from the suburbs to shop and do things in Denver will also be helping to support this solution to homelessness and this path to reducing homelessness. So the way that the dollars will be used, these are the 3 things that the dollars will be focused on in the eligibility, and then I'll get into the details of the plan. And there is a plan. The media sometimes isn't covering that, but it exists, and I encourage you to get the facts on that if you have questions. But supportive housing is housing plus services, and that also includes building new housing as well as doing rental assistance to get families quickly rehoused. Shelter, to restore the number of shelter beds and also to improve 24-hour services. When you see lines outside of shelters and the impacts that sometimes happen to neighborhoods, that is generally because that shelter is only open for the overnight. People have to wait in line, they get in, they then wait in line maybe to get on a bus to go somewhere else. When they wake up in the morning, they are not getting services during the day. They're not getting mental health support. They're not getting housing counseling. Those that are working aren't getting any, assistance with their needs. And so that goal here, and we've tested this actually during COVID, was to have shelter open 24 hours a day. And what we saw is that when it is open in the day and people don't have to move around and hide their stuff and they can stay calm and they can get services, we are seeing 15% of the people using shelter during COVID were formerly sleeping outside. And what they said is they came in because it was calm, peaceful, and one location instead of shuffling all over town. The other thing we're seeing is that they're getting health services and the things they need. So we should be seeing better housing and health outcomes. And then finally, this funding will also be flexible enough to be able to fund tiny homes or other interim solutions for people who don't fit into these 2 solutions. And that's really important. We want to be able to, keep innovating and trying new things, including direct outreach to those on the streets and direct support and other solutions. So in the short term, we will in year 1, we will regrow 100 shelter beds and we will keep shelters open for 24 hours. That is a concrete outcome in year 1. It's on the left side here. It's not quite as blunt, and we're going to update that, but those are the 2 outcomes. We also will be providing rental assistance to a number of people to get them directly housed, especially if we see people who've lost their jobs in COVID and they are newly homeless. Our goal is to get them rehoused very quickly rather than to let them be in the system, which increases their odds of staying in that situation. And then from years 2 through 10, we're talking about getting to 1,800 new apartments that have services. We call that supportive housing. We also are talking about 4 to 6 projects that will build a new shelter on the ground floor and housing above. This is efficient. It uses the space really efficiently in our city because we know land is hard to come by. It allows us to share services between the shelter on the ground floor and the housing above. And it's a model that can help us reach some special populations. One of the projects that's a catalytic project in the pipeline is for families with children. Another is for seniors. You remember those numbers from the first slide? We have almost 1,000 people who are over the age of 55 experiencing homelessness. These are senior citizens without homes. And so there's a provider wanting to do a day shelter and then housing above. And so these are the plans for how the dollars will be used, with a portion of the dollars remaining and being able to be used for those innovative solutions. We want to be able to do inclusive planning and take input from the community on how to use these dollars. They will flow through the city, so there's no wasted dollars setting up a new nonprofit or taking the time that it takes to get a new entity up and running. And it also means the city can make sure that we're using all the dollars we have efficiently. We do have dollars in the budget for homelessness right now. And what they're doing is saving lives. They are paying for emergency beds, particularly in the winter. They are paying for buses to get people to those emergency beds. They are not able to get to the point, excuse me, I'm about to sneeze. Achoo! Achoo! They are not enough dollars for us to get that 24-hour service or to get the mental health and employment and housing services. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about going from emergency to transformation. And we want the city to be able to use its existing dollars alongside these new dollars to make that continuum work. Now, the question you may ask is, how do we know it will work? Well, first of all, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. What we see with supportive housing in particular is for those who are chronically homeless and have had a really hard time. They have a disability on top of being homeless, and they've maybe been homeless for a long time. 43% of the people we are putting into housing in our region come directly from the streets. So when people say to me, what are you doing about folks on the streets? Housing is a solution for people on the streets. And I'm going to talk for a minute about how successful they are. But remember those newly homeless folks that I talked about, right? They just lost their jobs in the pandemic. You know, their car got totaled. They had a bankruptcy because of a medical bill that they didn't expect, right? A bad thing happened. They hit rock bottom. They didn't have the safety net that some of us might have of a family member who could take them in or other help. And they found themselves suddenly homeless. That's where we use these other tools like rapid rehousing. So the goal here is to get folks quickly housed. So why we know this housing model works, we have housed about 500 people in Denver in supportive housing. And those folks have been 80% successful on average for the most chronically homeless individuals. The retention rate is even higher for folks who haven't been on the streets quite as long and don't have quite as many barriers. 300 people who were going through the jails, going through the emergency rooms, getting arrested for trespass, getting arrested for public urination. Those folks saw a 50 to 70% reduction in arrests. Once they were not homeless anymore, they didn't have arrests because they didn't have those issues. They weren't, they had a place to go to the bathroom. They had a place to sleep. So what we're seeing is our community is safer and more stable when people are housed, as is that person. Their health is better, fewer ER visits. And that 80% retention rate is for year 3 to 4. So this is not just something that works for a minute or for a year. It's working 3 and 4 years in. And that's the model that we will be scaling up. So this is about scaling up proven housing models. People pay the rent that they can afford. They do pay rent. Many people who are homeless have income. They're just unable to get ahead enough to pay for the housing costs they need. So the campaign, as you know, is underway. The voting is underway. You need to get your ballot in by November 3rd. DenverVotes.org is where you go, or you can call 311 if you have questions on where to drop your ballot, or if you have any other questions, you need a replacement ballot. Plan about an hour at least for this ballot. It is a long one. If you haven't done it yet, please don't wait till the last minute. And then I'm asking you, if you're passionate about what we've talked about today, to spread the word. It is a long ballot. We don't have a very large campaign, so we are going to rely on word of mouth. We're going to rely on you posting to be yesuntobe.org on your Facebook page, sharing it with friends, texting it to your mother and saying, have you voted? This is really important. Please help. This is a chance for our city to come together. We have a lot of division in our country. And I believe this campaign is bringing together people from all different perspectives who agree that they believe we can reduce homelessness and that we have to act now before we fall further behind. Because what we know is the pandemic is actually going to put us a little further behind with homelessness because of the unemployment rate. Every time we see the unemployment rate go up, we see homelessness go up a little with it. That's historical. And so if that's the case, we need to do this now so we don't fall further behind. So with that, these are the links to learn more about it. And I know we may not have a lot of folks for questions, but I'm going to take them anyway, if there is any. So I'll pause there. All right, I'm seeing Mike, you don't have anybody. I can't see anybody. So that may be it, but I want to thank anyone who watches this for taking the time, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman. We really appreciate it. I'll make sure this video makes it out to our social media, and we'll put out a special email specifically for it. So thank you very much for your time this evening.
Awesome. If I may, since we have just a minute,
Sure.
you know, I also sponsored a second ballot measure called Yes Unto G. It is a measure related to transparency and, you know, balance of power in the city, ensuring that we can be responsive to making adjustments to our budget in the middle of the year. So if folks would like to learn a little bit more about that, it's yesuntoge.org. And it's one of the charter cleanups that council is passing just to make sure that we have the right checks and balances in our city's system. There are numerous protections, all of the same protections that apply to the budget process each year in our once a year discussion would apply to any changes made in the middle of the year. Only unspent dollars could be moved around. And it, you know, this year teaches us, as every year does, unexpected things come up. So hope folks will also check out 2G. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes, on 2G
Thanks,
and on 2B. Thank you, Robin.
Thank
Have a good
you.
evening.
Bye.
All right. And with that, it's a very simple evening or meeting this evening. I always open it up if we have open mic comments. We do have two other attendees here. If anyone would like to speak up.
Hey, Mike, this is Ryan. Can you hear me?
I can.
I am traveling, but I could give an update on 39th Avenue. I can't see either who's here or not. I didn't know if you wanted to jump into it.
Sure, an update would be great.
So we are still looking at opening at the end of the month. We are still discussing on when all of the actual fences will go down. It will be somewhere between October 30th and the middle of November. We'll actually have them pulled down. A majority of them will probably go down right away at the end of October. One of the issues or the reasons that they would stay up is some of the ADA compliant handrails from Franklin to Williams have taken longer to arrive on our site, and we can't get them installed if we don't have them. So we're trying to get those there, and we're just kind of trying to understand what our liability is. We don't want anybody to get hurt there or anything like that. So we're looking at that. We're trying to look at having the mayor come out, but it's starting to look like, due to COVID and the kind of recent uptick in numbers, that we may not exactly be able to, have anybody from the city come out. It's going to be one of the things where we can do a Facebook Live opening, more or less. We're going to try and get the media out to let everybody in the community know. We're also looking at getting some postcards and potentially a banner or something that we can hang from a couple of the bridges out there to let the community know that it is open, and please use this brand new amenities in your guys' backyards. So we're kind of just now working on buttoning up the vegetation. mostly, and just kind of getting the punch list in order. SEMA will probably more than likely be around towards the end of November, but as we get closer towards the end of November, the amount of people and activity for our project is going to slowly go down, and our presence is kind of going to fade away. But for the community members here, I will still be working with the contractor on any punch list items. And if there's any concerns or anything that needs to be addressed afterwards, I'd probably be the best person to go to. And so my email is ryan.crum, C-R-U-M, at denvergov.org. If anybody wants to reach out to me, and we can make sure that anything is, I can at least hear any issues and help get resolution. So I don't know if anybody is on mic that has questions or you have questions, but that's kind of just a general update of where we're at.
Sounds good. No, I don't have any questions, and we don't really have anyone else in the meeting right now, but it was a great update, and I'll make sure it's included in the video that goes out to our social media and to our email list. So thank you.
Sure, no problem.
All right. Well, if that's it, all of the announcements for the evening, then we'll adjourn the meeting. So thank you very much for attending, both Ryan, Anthony, Robin, and Hannah earlier, and her partner. So we'll make sure this meeting is posted online, and we'll see you next month. Thank you. Have a good night.
Take care. Have a good
Thanks.
night.
You too. Bye.